And what way are
Yeah.
we different from a gorilla, for example?
Yeah, well, it's just the nature of our digestive tract. We just don't have that functional ability to break down fiber and to extract these nutrients because we're not designed to do it. A gorilla can extract a lot of nutrients out of the specific leaves that they eat because they do eat specific leaves. All animals eat very specific plants if they eat plants at all. There's 340,000 plants in the world. Koalas eat one, pandas eat one, cows, horses, grazing animals, they eat grass. That's it. And they eat specific grasses. The grass that a cow eats is different from the grass that a sheep eats. And so you can actually pasture them on the same paddock and they don't compete for resources, right? And if they do, if they eat each other's grass, they can actually get quite sick. And there are a lot of maladies in veterinary medicine that, big head, limp neck, crazy cow syndrome, all of these things are names for illnesses and ailments that animals get when they eat the wrong plant, right? And so vets have figured this out. We figured this out actually with people as well. We knew that there was 5 different types of gout. It wasn't just these uric acid stones. That's what's called gout now, and the others are called pseudo gout. But up until a couple decades ago, there were actually 5 causes of gouts. One of those was oxalates.
Mhm.
Oxalates come from eating plants that have these oxalates. And you make a bit of them, from the degradation of collagen, but it's just a couple milligrams, right? We can deal with up to about 150 to 200 milligrams of oxalates a day. And so we would produce from the breakdown of our amino acids a few milligrams of this. So it's well under the threshold of what we can tolerate and handle on a daily basis. But when you're eating spinach and half a cup has 600 milligrams, doesn't go too well, because spinach is such a great thing. No, it's not. But it has so much calcium, it has so much iron. Not for you, it doesn't. That's not bioavailable. We can't get that. And so, there's so many oxalates, which oxalates can bind and strip out, zinc, calcium, and magnesium, and all these other sorts of things. Yeah, there's a lot of, if you break it down and put it into, a gas, a machine that calculates out the different sort of atoms that are in that matrix, that has a lot of calcium in it, sure. But when there was a study in the 1950s where they tried to bolster up people's calcium levels by giving them spinach, and they actually found that their calcium levels went down, right? Because the calcium was bound up in ways that we couldn't break down and get access to, and the oxalates that came with the spinach actually bound our calcium and stripped it out of our system. 75% of kidney stones are calcium oxalate stones, right? And so this is not a good thing. So we don't have that, biological ability. So we can argue, well, our guts look like a gorilla, or our guts look like a tarsier, which is a fully carnivorous primate. And or it looks like it doesn't look, or it looks like more like a cow than a lion. It's like, okay, come on. We are primates. We have the digestion and teeth and other sort of characteristics of a primate with our own individual biological idiosyncrasies, right? And one of those but the most important thing is function, right? We do not have the ability to break down fiber. That's not something that we can do on a large scale. I mean, you can cultivate certain gut bacteria in your colon, and some of it will get broken down into beta hydroxybutyrate,
Mhm.
right? And people say, well, that's really good because that's your enterocytes, your gut lining really love that and they really want that. That's really good for them. Okay. Well, that may be true. And so maybe if you're eating a bunch of plants and carbs and things like that, maybe that provides a benefit, also provides a benefit because it blocks the absorption of things that are bad for you. And so if you're eating good things like just meat, it's a bad thing because it blocks out things that you want. But if you're eating a whole bunch of nonsense and lectins and toxins, well, maybe some fiber is actually, in the mix may not be a bad thing because it's actually stopping you from absorbing all of this stuff, right? So, um, but at the same time, one of the major ketone bodies that we make when we're in ketosis is beta hydroxybutyrate, right? So like that's exactly what we make anyway. If we don't eat carbohydrates and we just eat a traditional ancestrally appropriate diet, and so you could make some of this stuff if you eat fiber, but it's not enough to run our body. It's not enough to get enough nutrition out of that, enough energy out of that. It's a very small amount, very, very small amount, because we just simply don't have the ability to break down fiber. And that was the argument as to why we should eat fiber. And it's still the argument why we should eat fiber, because you can't break it down. You can't absorb it. You can't get nutrition from it. And that's what you want. In the 80s, this was thought to be the perfect diet food, because you can't break it down. You can't get nutrition. You don't get calories from it. Oh, great. You can eat as much of it as you want and you get full and you feel full, but you're actually getting nothing for it. And of course, your brain is a lot smarter than that. Your body's a lot smarter than that. Our bodies are a lot smarter than we are, because you have a lot of sensors in your stomach that actually track up directly to the brain, and just say how many nutrients you're getting, how much protein you're getting, how much fat are you getting. And so, you put through a lot of fiber and you get stretch receptors put out leptin saying, hey, we're full. But your brain is getting the signals like, we have no nutrients here. There's nothing good for us here. You need to eat. And so people are starving and they're miserable and they're bloated because they have all this fiber just packed in their gut. I mean, look at the gut of a gorilla. It's massive, bloated thing, because their intestines are so long and they have so much fiber packed in there. They have to eat 40 to 60 pounds of leaves a day. And they poop out 8 pounds of meat a day, or not meat, sorry, of feces a day. They eat some of that too to try to upcycle those nutrients, right? Because they have to get a second pass at digestion because it's so difficult to break down plants, right? It's very difficult to turn plant material and plant tissue into animal tissue. And most animals can't do that. 70% of animals that have ever existed are carnivores, right? And that's because it's a lot easier to eat an animal that has already done the hard work for us. We don't have that ability. In fact, we actually do have very carnivorous adaptations. We have a very, very low pH, very acidic stomach acid that is in keeping with other carnivores, and even approaching that of carrion animals like vultures, right? So we're actually very low. We're certainly in the carnivorous range of stomach pH. It's around 2, sometimes 1.5, 1.5 to 2. Cow is anywhere between 4 and 6, right? So it's much different. This is a logarithmic scale, right? So that's a big difference between 2 and 4, or 2 and 6. And we have a proportionately longer small intestine, because that's where we need to get all of our nutrients absorbed. And our colon is actually relatively short. Other primates that eat fibrous food, they have that the other way around. Their small intestine is small and their large intestine is much larger and much longer, because they're what's called hind gut digesters. And so they digest it and absorb this food in their colon and in their cecum, which is the first part of the large intestine. And we know of it as an appendix, which is that big. But in a gorilla, it's like 4 feet long, wrapped around in coils, and has a blind pouch at the end of it. And this is where fiber packs into and sits there and ferments and breaks down into short chain fatty acids and protein. And that's what the gorilla eats, or that's what the gorilla absorbs. So we don't have that functionality. We don't have a long cecum, because we don't, and form equals function in biology. So we don't have that form. We don't have that function either. So maybe millions and millions of years ago, if you're, a fan of evolution, that was much longer and we were able to absorb this, but we haven't used it in millions and millions and millions of years. And so that's gone away, because that's not in keeping with survival. If you are, putting energy into making this big, long, expensive, fuel demanding organ, the digestive tract is very high fuel demand. If you're doing that, then you're going to waste resources and you're going to die. And so the people that survived, the ones that had smaller and smaller and smaller cecums, then you could dedicate more energy and resources to growing our brains, which take about like 50% of our resources, of our energy requirements, go to our brain. And that's very, very out of proportion with other animals. And so, we had to shrink down our gut and take away, energy demands from other areas so that we could put it up into our brain. And the only way you can do that as if you're eating extremely highly nutritious and nutrient dense, calorie dense food, which is what meat and fat is, right? And have to be very, very, very bioavailable and digestible and absorbable. And if you didn't have that, you can't absorb the nutrients, the requisite nutrients, in such a way that, you know, we can really do well with such a shortcut. And so that's the main thing, is that we just don't have the form or function of an herbivorous animal, and so we cannot, you know, survive on fiber, whereas a gorilla can. And people say, well, look at a gorilla, so big and strong, and they're getting enough protein. They're not getting protein from the plants. They're getting protein from the bacteria that are dying off, right? And so we don't have those bacteria. We don't have that luxury. So, you know, we need to get that protein from the food we eat. Now, you can get protein from plants, and, you know, there's a major straw man, which is just so ridiculous. I mean, the only arguments that vegans are winning are the ones that they're having with no one, right? Because they're saying like, oh yeah, people say you can't get enough protein and blah blah blah. Like, no one has said that. No one has ever said that. You know, of course you can get protein from plants. There are proteins in plants. Now, you're not going to get them in the right ratios, so it's more difficult. And they say, well, you know, if you take, you know, protein isolates and this, that, and the other, like, yeah. Listen to the words, protein isolates, right? So someone has gone through and done a chemical and industrial process to this and stripped those amino acids and made them bioavailable, because there's a lot of poorly bioavailable proteins and amino acids. So you strip that and you've broken these things down into their constituent amino acids, and you've gotten rid of all the, you know, protease inhibitors, presumably, hopefully, and you know, and then you just have the amino acids derived from plant structures. No one is arguing that, you know, lysine from a plant is going to be as good as lysine from meat. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement. No one has ever made that argument, right? And so, you know, if you're getting equivalent amounts, yeah, fine, you can get it from plants. That's not what people are saying. That's not what people are talking about. They're saying that you can't get, you know, like the requisite nutrients. There's aren't like the different vitamin complements like B12, you're not really going to get, because it doesn't exist unless you want to eat your feces. You can do if you want. And it comes with problems. It comes with other issues, right? It comes with you know, these defense chemicals that can cause harm. So people are saying, oh, look at a gorilla can get all this protein. Well, we can't, you know, like that's not the same thing. And they get it from the bacteria that are breaking down and they're absorbing. And so we don't do that. We can't do that, you know. So it's harder for us. It's harder for us to get protein. You can do it. It is harder though, and it comes at a price. It comes at a consequence, you know. And so that's not free. And also, you will not get carnitine at all. Carnitine does not exist. It's carnivore, you know, carnitine. It's carne. It's Latin for body, right? So this comes from bodies, and so, you know, the food from bodies and the, you know, the protein from bodies, this doesn't come from plants, right? And there are others as well. And these are considered non-essential amino acids, but that's not actually always the case. Only 75% of people make enough carnitine, or even any carnitine. So there are 25% of people that don't make enough or don't make any at all. And so it's actually essential to them, and they need that. And this is actually Texas A&M actually showed that this is a cause for autism, is people that aren't getting enough carnitine. Their parents are putting them on a vegetarian diet or vegan diet when they're kids. They don't make enough carnitine. They're not getting it from their food, and so their brains don't develop properly, because you have to have carnitine for proper neuronal development. And, you know, they're not getting it, unfortunately, so their brains aren't developing properly, and they're getting what we are calling autism, which is really malnutrition and toxicities that are delaying or restricting the proper development of our brains. It's not a genetic issue, you know, because if they eat proper food and they don't eat things that are harming them, and they eat things that they need to develop, they won't develop autism. In fact, people are reversing, or at least improving significantly, the symptoms of autism and the developmental issues that go along with autism, by putting people on a ketogenic diet, and especially a keto carnivore diet where it's highly meat based. So the idea that you know, gorillas can do it, so can we, is a bit sophomoric, and you know, and it actually, you know, requires a bit more looking. And if you scratch under the surface, you see that it's not as simple as, oh, an ox eats grass and gorilla eats that. We're not an ox. and we're not gorillas. They have different digestions and digestive tract, and they have different nutritional demands as well. And so they require different things than we do, and so they eat different things than we do as well.